August 1995, Belgium. In the past 2 months, 4 girls had vanished from opposite ends of the country. The local police departments investigating the disappearances of Anne and Effia and Julie and Melissa were getting nowhere. They had even failed to make a connection between the cases that would point towards a serial kidnapper. But 100 miles away, in Charleroi, another department within the police force, the National Gendarmerie, had received some disturbing information pointing them to a prime suspect. 3 weeks after Anne and Effia's disappearance, a letter had arrived from a woman saying that she had seen 2 teenage girls being held in her son's house. The letter was signed Janine Lawrence, the mother of Marc Dutroux.
She wrote a letter to the police to say that she knew that 2 girls are kept by Dutroux in house. 2 girls of 16 and 18, she said. Anne was 17, Effie 19. Police didn't do anything about it.
In 1993, the Charleroi Gendarmerie had been contacted by one of Marc Dutroux's tenants, Claude Thibault, who said he had some disturbing information about his landlord.
I first met him in 1992. We were in the car. There were 2 girls walking along. I think they'd been drinking. One of them was staggering. And he parked the car at the side of the road and then he suggested kidnapping the 2 girls. You had to creep up behind them, put your hand over their mouth and put them into the car. Close the door, the child lock was on so they couldn't get out, and if need be, knock them out. But I refused point blank. I said to Marc Dutroux, "You're mad, I'm not doing that." He took me straight home, and I went straight to the gendarmerie within the hour.
The gendarmes persuaded Thibault to become their informant. Over the next 2 years, he reported that Dutroux was planning to kidnap girls to sell them into a prostitute network.
When he was out in his car or van or whatever, when he saw any little girls, he used to say, "They're young and fresh, that would sell well." But the police knew this, they knew everything.
3 other informants also came forward confirming Thibault's testimony. But remarkably, in the summer of 1995, when young girls started to vanish, the gendarmes didn't take Dutroux in for questioning, a decision that would have tragic consequences.
Si tu pouvais m'entendre, je veux que tu saches que ta maman, ton papa, ton frère, toute la famille, tous nos amis ne font plus qu'une seule chose depuis que tu es parti, te chercher et t'attendre. On pense tous très très fort à toi.
Whenever in the United Kingdom young children went missing, there would be a national outcry from the very beginning, and there would have been a very large police investigation mounted. Now, somehow in Belgium, none of that seemed to have taken place, and it just went quiet very quickly.
After 3 weeks, the police were drawing a blank. The parents, desperate to know what had happened to their daughters, hired a local detective, who in turn hired a criminal profiler to try to help with the case.
He took a very high risk. This means that he is not a debutant, and with a criminal record for abduction, sequestration and torture, maybe there are 5 or 6 people who fit already this small profile.
Anyone with a criminal record for a similar crime should have been a prime suspect. Marc Dutroux, imprisoned for the rape and abduction of 5 women, had been released just 3 years earlier. Aged 38, Dutroux was an unemployed electrician who lived in Charleroi with his second wife and 2 children. He fitted Carine's profile with uncanny accuracy. Carine gave the profile to the police, but despite his previous conviction, Dutroux was never taken in for questioning.
A few weeks after the disappearing of Julie and Melissa, they know everything about Marc Dutroux, everything they need to know. They know about his trial in 1989. They have 4 people who have informed the police spontaneously to say that Marc Dutroux asked them to help kidnap girls. They know he's He has this stupid idea about cages, putting kids in there. If you need to know where Julie and Melissa are, the police has all the answers. They have the whole file. The question remains, why didn't they arrest him?
Instead of arresting Dutroux, the gendarmes started a secret surveillance operation on his house in Marcinelle, codenamed Othello. In charge was gendarme René Michaud.
René Michaud was the man in charge. He monopolized all the information that came in about Dutroux in the second half of 1995. It's all going to René Michaud. And he puts it in his bag and he says, "This is my secret operation. I keep my information here."
Under Operation Othello, the gendarmes watched the house for 5 months, but for some reason made no further moves on Dutroux. Then, on December the 6th, he was arrested by the local police for car theft and placed in custody. The gendarmes, hearing that the police were planning to search the house, became alarmed.
La gendarmerie, Monsieur Michaud.
The gendarme, Monsieur Michaud, hurried to the examining magistrate, stepped into the room and said, "Don't send an ordinary police commissioner. Send me, Michaud, because I know Dutroux, and I've had him under surveillance for some time." So, they didn't send a police commissioner, they sent Michaud.
René Michaud and a team of gendarmes searched the house. They discovered a stash of video cassettes. Michaud later watches them and determines that 2 of the cassettes are of no use to their investigation.
René Michaud put some kind of symbol on it, and it meant not important, don't look at it. These were the 2 most crucial cassettes.
4 years later, the 2 videos would be discovered and watched by another police department. One of them showed Marc Dutroux constructing a ventilation system to his underground cell. The other one showed Dutroux raping a girl on a trip to Slovakia, and other images of a group of young gypsy children, undressed below the waist. Michaud had also missed a 3rd cassette, a recording of the parents' appeal on Julie and Melissa's disappearance. Michaud and a locksmith then went into the cellar that connected to the hidden cell.
He went downstairs into the cellar, alone, with the locksmith who'd opened the door, where the gendarmerie suspected Julie and Melissa were, in a hidden cell, because Dutroux was a man who abducts girls and has a reputation for having a hiding place in his cellar. Well, he went down alone with the locksmith into the cellar.
In the cellar, they discovered chains, vaginal cream, a gynecological speculum.
René Michaud is supposed to be looking for a hidden cage. He hears the whisper of voices of children. There's a guy next to him who's helping him. He hears these voices too, and he says, "Strange, we have children's voices here." The reaction of René Michaud, he shouts, "Silence!" And of course, there's no whispering anymore. And they leave.
The locksmith was questioned, and the locksmith said, "I heard the voices so well that I said to Michaud, I'm not leaving here before we've stripped the place. Those voices are in the house." And Michaud responded, on the 13th of December in the cellar, "Who's the gendarmerie officer here, you or me?" Then I went home, I told my wife, and I kept my mouth shut.
Operation Othello was called off. Michaud reported to his superiors that they had found nothing and that Dutroux was free from suspicion. March 1996. Marc Dutroux is freed from prison, having served 4 months for car theft. He is also freed from suspicion of the kidnap of 4 girls the previous summer, as the gendarmerie had called off their secret surveillance of his house in Marcinelle. On the 9th of August, Dutroux and an associate, heroin addict Michel Lelièvre, drove 80 miles to the town of Bétry. In search of young girls, they hung around the local swimming pool. 14-year-old Laetitia Delhez appeared. She didn't return home, but Dutroux's luck was about to run out.
When Laetitia disappears, it happens in Neuchâtel, a very small district, where you had a terrific judge, juge d'instruction, Jean-Marc Conrot. You have a public attorney, Michel Bourlet, who's very touched emotionally about what he saw on television about these parents. When the phone call comes, a girl has disappeared. This is like a war situation in Neuchâtel.
Within 3 days, the investigators had found a witness who had seen a suspicious white van in the area, and another who could recall part of its number plate.
It was a routine for the police to put this combination in the computer. They see Marc Dutroux convicted for kidnapping 5 girls in 1989. That's how they have found Marc Dutroux.
Dutroux was arrested for the kidnap of Laetitia. Also arrested were Michel Martin and Michel Lelièvre. But it would be another 3 days of interrogation before the police knew what they were dealing with.
Dutroux and Lelièvre were being held and questioned, and Lelièvre was in need of a fix, and Lelièvre at some point cracked, and it all came out.
The interrogators confronted Dutroux with Lelièvre's confession that they knew now where Laetitia was. But Dutroux delivered an even bigger surprise.
Dutroux said, "It's not one girl I'm going to give you, but 2. And he pointed to a photo behind me, and it was Sabine's photo. And I turned round and I said to him, 'That's Sabine.' And he said to me, 'Yes.'"
They didn't know about Sabine there then. They didn't know anything about this. It was a complete surprise to find a second girl.
The nation rejoiced as Sabine and Laetitia were returned home. Files of other missing children around the country flooded into Neufchâteau. Bourlet and Conrot and their team worked continuously, searching other properties connected with Dutroux.
They still had that hope, maybe we find another cage with living girls somewhere.
But it soon became clear that the search efforts had come too late. On August the 17th, 2 days after the release of Sabine and Laetitia, the bodies of Julie and Melissa were discovered, buried in Dutroux's garden in Sarre-le-Boussier.
Jeudi dernier, c'était l'euphorie. Aujourd'hui, c'est l'horreur, évidemment.
Other children, including Anne and Effie, were still missing. The Belgian police requested the help of the British police team that had been involved in the case of Fred and Rosemary West to help in the search. John Bennett and the Belgian police were to search each of Dutroux's 6 houses in the area, looking for missing children. The search moved to a house in Jumet, where neighbours had informed police that Dutroux had been using digging equipment in the garden. A week after the arrival of Bennett's team, they uncovered the bodies of two girls. Anne and Effia had been drugged and buried alive.
Alleszins één vraag voor ons is opgelost. Dat is dat wij niet meer hoeven te zoeken dat ze gevonden zijn.
The nation grieved. For the families, their search had come to an end. But the shockwaves of the case had only just started. Grief turned to anger as details of the bungled investigation came out.
This was in the period that the public opinion discovered Operation Othello, discovered all the things that had gone wrong before the arrest of Dutroux. So their reaction is, there must be somewhere a conspiracy, there must be something, this is unbelievable.
The Neufchâteau authorities instigated a broad and vigorous investigation into a suspected paedophile network, arresting 29 people, including police, gendarmes, and prominent businessmen. But it appeared to some that they had dug too deep. Connerot, the investigating magistrate, was sacked from the case under a tenuous accusation that he had lost his objectivity, compounding rumours of an establishment cover-up.
The situation in Belgium was like a revolution.
Belgians took to the streets in protest. Workmen went on strike, and firemen turned their hoses on official buildings. The protest culminated in the biggest demonstration since the Nuremberg rallies, the White March. White to represent the innocence of the children.
I think it was the biggest manifestation ever. There were no posters in the streets to say you go to Brussels that day for the White March. It was a word that was spread amongst Belgians. There wasn't even much publicity on radio and television. Everybody knew that they had to be there. There were more than 300,000 people marching to the streets of Brussels.
Un grand merci à tous d'être venus si nombreux. Merci. Merci aussi à tout le monde d'être venu.
To me, the crucial sentence in the final report of the Parliamentary Commission was, there are so many errors, so many mistakes during this investigation that it can't be explained only by mistake. There must be more.
The court case finally got underway in 2004, 8 years after Dutroux's capture, in the new Palais de Justice at Arlon. 500 witnesses were called to testify. Dutroux, the most hated man in Belgium, along with Michel Martin and Michel Lelièvre, was present in court, protected behind bulletproof glass. The court heard that Julie and Melissa had been alive in the cell at the time that René Michaud had searched the house. With Dutroux in custody for car theft, they had been left for 4 months with no electricity or heating. Michel Martin, visiting the house to feed her dogs, claimed that she'd been too afraid to go into the cell, so she'd pushed bags of food through the cell door. Julie and Melissa, unable to reach it, had starved to death. After 4 months, Dutroux was found guilty of the kidnap and rape of the 6 girls and the murder of Anne and Effia. He received life imprisonment. Michel Martin received 30 years, and Lelièvre 25 years. But the trial had raised more questions than it had answered. 30 witnesses had died in mysterious circumstances in the run-up to the trial. DNA tests and hair samples had gone missing or hadn't been performed.
die Maas bei Lüttich. Hier wird am 7. April 98 beim Säubern des Wasserwerks eine Frauenleiche aus dem Fluss gezogen. Die Autopsie zeigt, sie wurde geschlagen und gewürgt. Es ist die Zeugin Anna Konjevoda. Die Zahnärztin Brigitte Genard war befreundet mit Dutroux Mitangeklagtem, dem Brüsseler Geschäftsmann Michel Nioul. Sie gilt als wichtige Zeugin. Ein Jahr nach dem Beginn der Affäre ist sie tot. Selbstmord, heißt es. Hubert Massa ist Oberstaatsanwalt und auf dem Höhepunkt seiner Karriere. Er arbeitet erst seit kurzem am Fall Dutroux, da findet man ihn erschossen in seinem Büro. Mysteriös die Umstände. Er hat keinen Brief für seine Frau und seine Kinder hinterlassen. Trotzdem entscheidet die Staatsanwaltschaft Selbstmord. Bernard Routemont ist Filmemacher und handelt mit Pornokassetten. Er wird der Entführung eines Mädchens verdächtigt. Es soll eine Verbindung zum Fall Dutroux geben. Außerdem findet man bei einer Hausdurchsuchung Kindersachen und Spielzeug. Nachdem er schon mehrfach ergebnislos verhört wurde, meldet er sich eines Tages telefonisch bei der Polizei. Er möchte auspacken. Auf dem Weg zu diesem Termin rast er mit seinem Auto gegen eine Hauswand. Tot. Auf diesem Gelände fand man die Leichen von Anne und Evje. Hier wohnte der Dutroux-Komplize Bernard Weinstein. Dutroux soll seinem früheren Helfer zunächst das Betäubungsmittel Rohypnol gegeben und ihn dann lebendig begraben haben. Man vermutet, dass Weinstein aussteigen wollte. Wurde er deshalb ermordet? Wollte Dutroux verhindern, dass sein Helfer zum gefährlichen Zeugen würde? Weinstein nahm die Antwort mit in dieses fast anonyme Grab. Guy Goebbels war Gendarme in Grasse-Hologne, dem Ort, an dem Julie und Melissa verschwanden. Er arbeitete von Anfang an dem Fall. Seine Kollegen finden ihn eines Tages tot in seiner Wohnung, mit der Dienstwaffe erschossen. Offiziell beging Guy Goebbels Selbstmord, doch auch hier gibt es Zweifel. Familienangehörige sagen, er habe keine größeren Probleme gehabt, nichts, was eine solche Tat rechtfertigen könnte. Das Dorf Commiers bei Charleroi. Polizisten suchen hier nach Spuren in Zusammenhang mit dem Tod von Bruno Tagliaferro, ein Schrotthändler und Bekannter von Dutroux. Seine Frau Fabienne behauptet, er wurde umgebracht.
Seit seinem Tod kämpfe ich verzweifelt darum, dass die Wahrheit ans Licht kommt. Bis zum Schluss.
Was hat er Ihnen vor seinem Tod gesagt?
Dass alles vorbei sei, dass er zu viel wüsste und dass er bald sterben würde.
Das Ergebnis einer nachträglichen Autopsie gibt Fabienne recht. Ihr Mann, Bruno Tagliaferro, wurde vergiftet.
Dutroux wollte Tagliaferro umbringen lassen. Aber weshalb, sagte er mir nicht.
Ihn umbringen?
Ja, ihn und seine Frau. Er hat dafür 50.000 belgische Francs und die Waffe geboten.
Wann haben Sie das gehört?
Ich saß bei Dutroux im Auto. Da hat er es mir gesagt.
Als auch Fabienne Jopin bedroht wird, bittet sie vergeblich um Polizeischutz. Sie glaubt, wichtige Unterlagen ihres Mannes entdeckt zu haben. Kurz danach findet ihr Sohn sie tot im Schlafzimmer, halb verbrannt neben ihrem Bett. Die Matratze wurde mit Methanol überschüttet. Die Justiz geht von Selbstmord oder Unfall aus.
Wissen Sie, jemand, der sich umbringen will, lässt nicht die Waschmaschine laufen, setzt nicht Kartoffeln mit Salz zum Kochen auf.
Auch ein Unfall ist unwahrscheinlich. Auf den Polizeifotos vom Tatort, die wir einsehen konnten, stand die leere Methanolflasche zugeschraubt auf dem Nachttisch.
Sie war keine Spinnerin. Sie wusste ganz genau, was sie tat. Sie war auch nicht verrückt. Sie wusste nur nicht mehr, wem sie noch vertrauen konnte.
Eine weitere Zeugin stirbt, als sie nachts auf dem Weg nach Hause mit 80 Stundenkilometern gegen die Brückenrampe kracht. Ein Unfall, sagt der Gerichtsexperte. Gina Pardans ist Sozialarbeiterin und betreut Opfer eines Kinderpornorings. Einige Tage vor dem Unfall schreibt sie einen Brief. Sie habe im Zusammenhang mit ihrer Arbeit Todesdrohungen bekommen. Sie fürchte um ihr Leben. Der Polizei meldet sie, man habe ihr mit einem Autounfall gedroht.
In dieser Zeit wird Gina regelmäßig mit dem Tod bedroht. Sie wird beobachtet und verfolgt. Wir stellten auch merkwürdige Probleme an ihrem Telefon fest. Im Zug wurde sie von einem Mann angesprochen, der ihr sagte, dass sie besser mit ihrer Arbeit aufhören sollte. Sonst würde sie nicht mehr lange leben.
Vor ihrem Tod erzählte sie Freunden von einem Videoband, auf dem ein Mädchen bei einer Sexfete umgebracht wird. Sie glaubte, einen der Täter erkannt zu haben. Es sei ein Bekannter von Nioul. Als die Dutroux-Affäre beginnt, meldet sich Regina Luff, verheiratet, 4 Kinder, Besitzerin einer Hundepension, als anonyme Zeugin beim Untersuchungsrichter.
Sie wurde auf Bitte der Justiz von einem Team der Universität Leuven untersucht, unter Vorsitz des Professors Igot, der einen guten Ruf auf diesem Gebiet hat. Diese Experten haben bestätigt, dass Regina Luff ohne jeden Zweifel in ihrer Kindheit massivem sexuellen Missbrauch ausgesetzt war. Professor Igot präzisiert, dass es sich lohnt, zu untersuchen, was sie erzählt. Davon sind sie alle überzeugt. Und wenn das, was sie sagt, auch nicht als juristischer Beweis genutzt werden kann, sollte trotzdem aufgrund ihrer Aussagen ermittelt werden.
Während der tagelangen Verhöre erzählt sie von grauenvollen Erlebnissen über reiche und mächtige Männer, die bei Sexfeten junge Mädchen vergewaltigen, foltern und manchmal töten. Die Ermittler überprüfen einige ihrer Aussagen und meinen, es gäbe genügend Grund, sie ernst zu nehmen. Ihre Aussage: Dutroux sei Zulieferer und Michel Nioul der Organisator eines Kinderpornorings gewesen.
Nioul and Dutroux had been seen at the site of the latest abduction the night before. They'd been in constant phone contact the day it happened. And the next day, Nioul gave £10,000 worth of drugs to an accomplice of Dutroux. One witness claimed Nioul had ordered a girl.
When I saw him walking down the stairs, I thought that I knew everything about him. It was a shock. I thought, finally, they stopped him.
Regina Luff was one of the first to come forward. She said that as a child she'd been abused for many years in a paedophile network involving Nioul and Dutroux.
I remember Jean-Michel Nioul as a very cruel man. He abused children in a very sadistic way.
She says that at the age of 12 she was taken with other children to sex parties, and, she told investigators, Dutroux was there, working for Nioul.
Dutroux was a boy who brought drugs, cocaine and something like that to these parties, who brought some girls, or watched girls on these parties. Nioul, he was a sort of party beast, and Dutroux was more on the side.
Nioul denies he's ever met Regina Luff, but her story's never changed. Nioul, she said, was one of those who organised the parties and invited the cream of Belgian society, judges, politicians and influential businessmen, in order to compromise them.
It was big business, yeah. And it was very well organized, too. There's a lot of money going on there, and a lot of blackmail also. They had a lot of parties. They filmed it even. So yes, it exists. I know it sounds crazy. And I know that there is a big taboo on everything like that. But it exists, you know.
Regina Luff's story was horrific, but her account of a violent paedophile underworld was by now reinforced by new witnesses, some of whom also named influential people. The investigation began. The witnesses' identities were protected. Each was given a code name beginning with X. Regina was X1. They went up to X9. Their testimonies became known as Belgium's X-Files. The task of trying to verify them fell to a young police investigator.
They were telling stories we haven't heard before in our lives, things we couldn't believe at the first. So we told ourselves, is this true? Could this be true? And when it is true, it's frightening that things like that could happen. We had a special room for the interviews. It was specially equipped for people who have been victimized by such matters. There was a camera in the room. They were done mostly in the evening or the early hours. When the interviews were finished, they were written down by a few people of my team, all the way, from the first word to the last.
But then out of the blue, the investigation was stopped.
We received a message that we couldn't investigate anymore, just like that. We were sent home. Just like that, without an explanation, because our work hasn't been done all right. Very strange.
Why were you taken off this case?
I wish I knew. Perhaps we were touching something we couldn't touch. Some people say this, we didn't have to prove at that moment to say things like that. But perhaps we were coming closer to some things, yeah, perhaps.
Like what things?
I don't know, something Belgium or the world shouldn't know about.
Hi, my name is Carlos Venkis, and my mom Neringa, who's a former judge and a parliament member of Lithuania, has been detained 2 weeks ago and is currently in Chicago's federal prison. The Lithuanian government is seeking her extradition for 39 criminal acts that she's accused of. I would like to share the story of my family and also ask to sign the petition to the President of the United States. The story starts in 2008 when my cousin, who was 4 at the time, after coming back from a weekend visit from her mother, told my grandma and her father that her mother's friends are licking her. Soon the girl opened up more and told about everything that was going on in the mother's house.
Stolas.
She told stories about 3 men, Jonas, Andrus, and Idas. While my uncle wasn't able to find out who Idas was, Andrus turned out to be a businessman who's also an advisor to the Speaker of the Parliament, and Jonas turned out to be a district court judge. But no charges were filed. And one day, my uncle disappeared.
Double murder of a woman and a high-profile judge in Lithuania is believed to have fled the country. Police say Drąsius Kėdiš killed his victims because he believed they molested his 4-year-old daughter.
That day, my cousin was taken from the daycare and put in a psychiatric hospital, while the second girl, who according to my cousin was also abused and whose mother was shot, was taken by her father, and they moved away to Germany, where they were never seen again. The prosecutors announced on national TV that there were DNA evidence found on the murder weapon that confirmed that my uncle committed the crime. Much later, it was announced that the prosecutors made a mistake and no DNA was found. Around a week later after the killings, my mom managed to get the custody of my cousin and she was finally able to come home. The case was finally started and it was concluded that the prosecutors neglected to investigate my cousin's claims, and many of the officials involved lost their jobs, including the general prosecutor. My mom, who was a judge at the time, started to publicly talk about corruption and bribery in the Lithuanian courts. The media constantly attacked my family, writing articles and creating shows based purely on speculation and absolutely no evidence. These journalists received no consequences, while the journalists that supported my mom often were fined or their shows even prohibited to air. In April, the prosecutors announced that my uncle Drąsius is hiding in Spain. The next day, his body was found by the lake in Kaunas, Lithuania. The investigators ruled that his death was an accident, a statement that many Lithuanians have trouble believing. I'm gonna put up a picture of my uncle after death. The image is shocking, so if you're under the age of 18 or you just don't think you can look at it, please look away for the next 5 seconds. This is what a man who chokes while drinking looks like. In May of that year, the court announced that my cousin has to live with her mother, the mother that she's testifying against. The court ruled in favor of the mother, even though the psychologist determined that the girl has a very strong connection with her father, the grandparents, and her aunt Neringa. And the reason that she doesn't want to go to live with her mother is because 3 men would come to her mother's house. The girl refused to go, and thousands of Lithuanians surrounded our house and would not let the police pass.
Presidente Gueda! Presidente Gueda! Presidente Gueda!
Ir dar sykį noriu pakartoti ir mūsų pozicija oficiali, mes nesiruošime naudoti prievartos prieš jus.
In June, Andrius Usas fell off his four-wheeler, took off his helmet, and drowned in a puddle. On March 23, 2012, the police surrounded the house and tried to take my cousin by force. On May 17th, 240 police officers came to our house and carried my cousin away screaming.
Nu kaip Graikijoj, žinai, nu. Čia pastiprinimas. Pažiūrėkime, moteris.
Organizavimo ar kitų susirinkimų įstatymo. Tai visos.
Reikalauja visiems pakeisti
Dabar aš paaiškinu. Teismo sprendime pasakyta, kad prievarta vaiko atžvilgiu negalima. Ir jūs vaiciekautinį nepamirškite, prie vaiko nei piršto. Įsivesti savo kompaniją. Turi palikti man. Prašau palikti. Jeigu galim.
I haven't seen my cousin ever since. After that day, there were massive protests in Lithuania and abroad. The media started to speculate that my mom could potentially run against the president in 2 years. Just a few days after the protest, there were 5 charges brought against my mom. The parliament removed my mother's legal immunity, even though the prosecutors refused to provide all evidence. After the removal of her legal immunity, my mother resigned, while the chairman of the commission to investigate her challenged her to run against them. My mom founded a new political party, which won 7 seats in the parliament while having almost zero funding. Her campaign promised to reform the judicial and political system in Lithuania, with stricter punishments for corruption, rape, and pedophilia. Soon after the election, the general prosecutor asked the parliament to remove my mom's legal immunity once again, but this time there was one additional crime. The Liberals, the Conservatives, and the Social Democrats all announced that they're gonna vote in favor of removing my mom's legal immunity even before any evidence was presented and before the ruling of the Parliamentary Commission. The Parliament voted that the prosecutor has to provide the secret recording from the day that my cousin was taken. The prosecutor refused to do so, later showing only 12 seconds of the video. In 2013, my mother and I fled to the United States and asked for political asylum. But 2 weeks ago, the federal marshals showed up at our house. The Lithuanian government is seeking my mom's extradition back to Lithuania before the political asylum case is over. The number of crimes that my mom is accused of grew to 39, including contempt of the court, assault, illegal surveillance, psychological molestation, public statements to infringe the sovereignty of Lithuania, and many others. My grandparents, my aunts and uncles, my neighbors, my mom's supporters, and many of her party members are all facing charges, and some of them have already been sentenced. A famous Lithuanian doctor that testified that Andrius Usas came to her office to remove a birthmark from his sex organ is now facing charges of false testimony.
Pas mane atėjo labai keista šeima. Vyras, stambus, 2 moteriškės, viena jaunutė, kita vyresnė ir mergaitė. Kad jis turi dėmę ant lyties organo ir prašė, kad aš ją pašalinčiau. Jis išsėmė savo lyties organą, sėdint abiems moteriškiams ir per metrą nuo manęs sėdint mergaitė.
My mother will never receive a fair trial in Lithuania because the journalists and the politicians already agreed that she's going to be sentenced. The chairman of the Supreme Court of Lithuania called my mom an abscess in the judicial and political system of Lithuania. How can she receive a fair trial when the highest court officials in Lithuania are making public statements like this? Over 10 people connected to this case have died. A few years ago, my grandparents' car was hit by a truck. And during one of my mom's campaign rallies, all 5 bolts of the car wheel unscrewed themselves at the same time. If my mom is sent back to Lithuania, she will not receive a fair trial, and there is a serious threat to her life. Please sign the petition that's in the description of this video. I know this story doesn't affect you personally, but please don't ignore it. I would like to end this video with one of my favorite quotes. What you do for yourself dies with you when you leave this world. What you do for others lives on forever.
All her life, the mystery of her father's murder has loomed over Kiddist Forsyth. In 1993, Bulik Forsyth was a manager in the housing department of London's Lambeth Council. 3 months before she was born, he was bludgeoned to death and his flat set on fire. Now Sky News has seen evidence that he could have been about to expose an alleged paedophile ring operating within council premises.
there are some factors that point to him knowing something that was going on at work, and he was getting ready to blow the whistle.
This internal council report, obtained by Sky News, could be key. It details allegations of violent rapes conducted on council premises and the sexual abuse of children. It's here, at what is still the headquarters for Lambeth's housing department, that a paedophile ring operating within the council is alleged to have carried out sexual assaults. They used the basement, the report says, where they could rape victims without fear of being interrupted. And the report cites new witness evidence suggesting Bulik Forsyth may indeed have been killed as part of a cover-up. He tried to get away from the housing department, telling colleagues he had information which put him at risk.
It says there that he was willing to spill the beans, and he was scared that if he moved to another department that people in power could still get to him. So it seems that he was very fearful about something going on at work.
Is murder, and very nearly multiple murder. For whoever killed a local government official 4 months ago almost blew up a block of flats and all its residents. The dead man was Bulik Forsyth. Detectives hope tonight to find a motive.
A resident in Foster Court was disturbed by a commotion.
It was about 1 o'clock in the morning. I remember looking at the clock. I heard running at the back of the flats quite heavy footsteps.
The gas failed to explode, and Bulik's neighbour woke up an hour later.
Is anyone in there?
Well, I don't know. Mr. Forsyth lives there. If he's in or not, I don't know.
Oh, there's someone in there. Get a move on. Lock it out, Tom! Underneath there! Lock it out! Is there a body in here, Tom? There's a body in here, Gov! One man found in back bedroom, apparently dead.
The fire had been started deliberately. The dead man was 42-year-old Bulik Forsyth, and he'd been murdered, beaten repeatedly and savagely around the head. Bulik was last seen alive leaving the council offices around 5 p.m. on Wednesday, February the 24th.
Every morning I hear the alarm of Mr. Forsyth's go off, because my bedroom is above his bedroom. But this morning I didn't hear the alarm. And then when I went out at 9 o'clock, I saw his curtains open. That was unusual, because mostly his curtains are drawn at that time in the morning.
Edna, have you seen Bulik this morning?
Is he expecting you?
Well, not really, but I'm a little bit worried. He's normally here by now.
While his colleagues were trying to contact him, Bulik's flat may have been having visitors. A local resident recalls,
I was going over the paper shop to buy a paper, and I saw 3 men was coming out of Foster Court round the front there. They was carrying some briefcase and some folders in their hands. Why I noticed them? Because they look official. I never saw them here before.
if you were one of those 3 men, the police would dearly like to hear from you. 4 hours later, just before 2 o'clock, the same resident who'd seen visitors at the front noticed something unusual at the back of Bulik's flats.
I saw a white car parked there in the corner with 2 men sitting in it, and they was gazing at me. They're well dressed, and one of them have black hair, the other one have a brownish hair. I live here for 18 years and I never see a car parked there before.
Please call. I would like to know why he was murdered. And for my sake, my baby's sake, and his family, we all want to know why.
Member of Parliament John Mann is a former Lambeth councillor.
There's been a huge cover-up. There are many victims. There are deaths and murders. It's about time the truth came out in terms of child abuse in Lambeth.
Now, this has never been played on television before, but it has a particular relevance. Let's listen to this.
So who else is on the goner list?
Oh, it's endless, believe me. I just want to make a film of it. On film, I'd like to kill Jimmy Savile. I think he's a hypocrite.
Weren't I right?
I bet he's into all kinds of seediness that we all know about, but are not allowed to talk about. I know some rumours. I bet none of this will be allowed out.
I should imagine libelous stuff will be allowed out.
Nothing I said is libel.
Sounds a bit harsh, the death list there.
Well, but actually...
Sometimes you're contentious in life just because you're bored of that
But put aside put aside the rhetoric you were using. The fact that in 1978, at the height of the Sex Pistols explosion, there you are saying about Jimmy Savile, he was into all kinds of seediness that we all knew about. We weren't allowed to talk about it. I know some rumours. So you had heard the kind of thing that we now know about him, or stuff like that?
Yeah. I think most kids did too. Most kids wanted to go to the top of the pops, but we all knew what that cigar muncher was up to. But I'm very, very bitter that the likes of Savile and the rest of them were allowed to continue.
Did you ever try and do anything about Savile?
I did my bit. I said what I had to.
Did they air that? No. It just got suppressed.
Yeah.
For legal reasons.
Yeah. And
did you meet?
I found myself being banned from BBC Radio there for quite a while for my contentious behaviour.
Hello, welcome back. I'm pleased to say that our first programme of the new year has brought a really positive response to all the videos and reconstructions shown tonight. There's certainly something for the officers here to work on.
This is BBC One. Now the 9 o'clock news with Peter Sissons.
Good evening. A massive police hunt is underway tonight in West London for the killer of Jill Dando, who was murdered earlier today outside her terraced home in Fulham. Police said tonight she died from a single shot to the head. Neighbours who found her dying on her doorstep had heard a scream and seen a well-dressed man hurrying away down the street. The shocking loss of one of Britain's best-known personalities drew many tributes, among them from the Queen and the Prime Minister. Our chief news correspondent, Kate Adey, reports.
It's a quiet, pretty avenue in southwest London, where Jill Dando had lived for several years. Shortly before midday, some of her neighbours were alerted that something was wrong. Two women went towards the front door and saw someone lying on the doorstep. A third neighbour joined them.
I heard the scream.
You heard it?
I did hear a scream.
Did you hear a man's voice or anything like that?
No man's voice at all.
And did you hear a shot, or did you...
There was no shots. That's what I would say was a shot. I wouldn't have thought there was a shot, no.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to ensure that the Metropolitan Police secure the evidence, re-examine it, and investigate clear intelligence suggesting a powerful paedophile network linked to Parliament and Number 10.
Good morning, people. Thanks for everyone that's tuning in and watching this at the moment. For some reason, on this video, I've not made this, so I'm just playing it. This 60 minutes extra footage, for some reason, there's no audio. Whenever they use this clip.
Good evening and welcome to the BBC News at 6. Detectives are investigating allegations that 3 young boys were murdered by a paedophile ring that included figures at the heart of the British establishment in the 1970s and 80s. The claims have been made by an alleged victim known only as Nick.
Nick described a childhood stolen by a group of men who raped and tortured him at smart London venues, including Dolphin Square. He said he watched them murder 3 boys. The story was broken by an investigative website called Exero. They'd been speaking to Nick for 5 months.
So Nick, just tell me a bit more about the nature of the politicians who sexually abused you and other boys at Dolphin Square.
Particularly nasty individuals. One was probably a lot worse than the other. One was a former cabinet minister, and the other was just a MP, but nasty, like to inflict pain, like to see us in pain.
Right, I just want to pause there for 1 minute. Let me just bring this mic down a little bit closer. So, what I just want to mention here at the minute, Nick. Now, Nick, Exaro Nick, has come up on this. And Nick, basically, what ended up happening to him? He goes to prison for 18 years. Yeah? Now, the police believed this guy to be credible and true, as you're going to hear in a minute on the footage, which is playing. The police believed him to be credible and true. Now, Nick was the prototype for Andrew Ash. Yeah? The guy that I ended up filming. Now, they've both gone through this Exaro News. I had a guy from Exaro News come round here. I've got the whole recording of him being here. He was here for 6 hours. And his name was Tim Wood. And he fully admitted to me that he knows Ian Puddick. He fully admitted to me that he used to work... excuse me, for the News of the World. I mean, that's 2 boxes that he ticked straight away when he's come round. But he was honest about it. But he was from Exaro News. Now, they'd spoken to Nick, as you can see, and Exaro also spoke to Andrew Ash, who I filmed. Now, Nick goes away for 18 years for accusing VIPs. And what I'm telling you was supposed to happen to me. All you have to do is, instead of having Andrew Ash, swap him for Nick. Can you imagine it was me that got involved and helped Nick get his story out there? Only for it to end up. He goes away for 18 years. Now, this is what they was going to try and do with me, with Andrew Ash. Yeah, and if you remember, the police believed Andrew Ash. Operation Fernbridge, tweeted by Ian Puddick, who funded the whole operation of me filming Andrew, which is strange because Ian works for the Queen. So why he's funding an operation with Andrew Ash and funding me equipment to film Andrew Ash specifically, when Andrew Ash is going to accuse Prince Andrew, Prince Charles, amongst many, many others. Don't you find that a bit strange? Puddick funded that operation, and he works for the Queen. And Andrew Ash, who is funding the operation to film, is going to accuse his employer's sons. That makes sense? So Nick, Exaro Nick, was the prototype for Andrew Ash. And if I'd have supported Nick in the way that I'd filmed and supported Andrew Ash, I would have been going to prison as well for getting involved. And this is how you crush anyone from coming in and asking any more questions about VIP paedophile, politicians or whatever. And now we've had these 2 murders of these politicians that, in all honesty, we got to take their word for. I know everyone gets quotes from families and all this stuff, but let's face it, things have been made up before. So I can't believe a word that they say anymore. All I know is that they will pass new laws on behalf of these 2 politicians being attacked. And they will always bring it down to, a lone gunman or a lone knifeman killed this person because they didn't agree with, I don't know, they weren't helping fight against child abuse. They'll turn someone into some vigilante nutter, like Jill Dando, for fuck's sake. Look at the geezer that they was accusing, and it all turned out to be wrong, and so therefore we still don't know who killed the woman. Yeah. And guaranteed that she would have been looking into the likes of Lambeth Council and Bulick Forsyth, and I just happen to have that fucking article here in my house with Bulick Forsyth. And what area was he working on? He was Lambeth Council. Now, who else from the past do we remember being from Lambeth? Child abuse! Bill Maloney. Bill fucking Maloney. Now, was Bill Maloney seemed to pop up at the time of this Bulick Forsyth murder. Was Bill the man of the local area who was then going to pretend to be getting to the truth on that? Coming from Lambeth himself, he must have been quite tight with people. I mean, he was in with Puddick. Puddick knows the Queen. Fuck me. Now I can understand when Bill Maloney's on the street running up to the likes of Ken Livingstone. Do you want to go for a coffee? All fucking rigged. Theatre, all planned to make Bill Maloney look like a fucking child abuse activist. And then these people out there that have been abused by Lambeth Council in the fucking basement, that Bulick Forsyth had his ass fucking ransacked and beat up and then fucking set on fire for, all of the victims are going to go to people like Bill Maloney and Ian Puddick. And then they're going to have you fucking sorted out. And that's how it goes. So it was to rope in the victims of real child abuse so they could hunt you down and silence you. Bottom line.
Nick has been interviewed over a long period of time by experienced detectives from the Child Abuse Command.
And I just want to say at this point, so had Andrew Ash, as tweeted by Ian fucking Puddick. Do you remember? Andrew was now given 70 hours of interviews with Operation Fernbridge. Andy has now given 100 hours of interviews with Operation Fernbridge. Puddick works for the Queen. Andrew has given 100 hours of interview to Operation Fernbridge. Yet when I spoke to Ian Puddick, and I will play this conversation, Puddick says, I spoke to Andrew, got to admit that, because I caught you out on that one, right? And anyone can tell, from talking to him for 2 minutes, that, he would have confessed to being the Yorkshire Ripper. Now, obviously, I'm just like, talking along with Ian Puddick at this point, because I want him to fucking talk. Yeah, so I'm just like, kind of half agreeing with him, right? Just keep him fucking talking, the prick. Yeah? And he says something interesting. You can tell within 2 minutes of him that he would fess up to being the Yorkshire Ripper. And it's like, well, hang on a minute, you're tweeting that he's now giving 100 hours of fucking interview to Operation Fernbridge, that don't fucking exist, by the way. So why didn't you just tell your mates at Fernbridge, because you're clearly in with the old Bill and everyone, you know everyone, that he wasn't worth talking to? And why fund me equipment to go and film him? Oh, I didn't. But you did. But you did, Ian. You did. And you work for the Queen. Is that not strange? Yeah? You fucking cunt. Try and put me away for 18 years. You fuckface. You wait. You wait, you cunt. You fucking wait.
And he has also met an investigator from the Murder Command. They and I believe what Nick to be saying is credible and true. So yes, we do believe what Nick is saying.
John Wedger is a police whistleblower.
Oh, fuck me. Do you know what? See, right. I need to say something now. Now, here's the fucking problem with some of these videos that you find online. The problem is that they are using footage from this ITJN seating, right, which is headed by Robert David Still, right, who basically is ex-CIA, and you can't find out no fucking background on him. He's connected to this other UK agent, you know, alleged by Nikki Cooper, and she's more than likely right, because they've got these American-UK connections, because John Wedger is now coming up in videos that are being put together by American truthers. So, to the American truthers that are out there, will you please take notice of this video? I've been exposing John Wedger, right, for how many fucking years? 6, 7 years with these lot? And this footage that I'm about to play comes from the ITJN seatings, where, you know, this is a mixture of, well, Robert David Still, we're hearing now, he's apparently dead, right, the geezer that's heading this. You got Gordon Bowden on here, who was, exposing 788 Finchley Road as a boiler house with all fucking shit companies, fake companies, money laundering going for it. He's supposedly dead. But he turned up at my court case against Ian Puddick, trying to convince me that he wants to help me against Ian Puddick and give me fucking equipment. Where have we heard that one before? So all of these people know each other. And I wouldn't be surprised if Bill Maloney and these people are now trying to come in through the back door through American Truthers videos that are being put together that you can only find on BitChute. Not on YouTube. You can only find them on BitChute, because if you find them on BitChute, it all looks like, oh, these videos can't be played on YouTube, yeah, and you must only get them on BitChute because they're truthful. Now, don't fall for that either. There is a lot of good information in there. But these researchers, for them to have found all this other stuff what's on here, for them to have not come across the videos, I put one up there, had nearly 500,000 views on it. Don't tell me you ain't fucking seen it. Blowing the arsehole out of fucking John Wedger and Bill Maloney and Ian Puddick when I asked for me fucking computers back from the police after them taking them for a year on behalf of Ian Puddick's phony malicious communications fucking allegation, which comes the next month after my ex-solicitor, Richard Mallet, getting done for fraud. But Richard Mallet turns up on Andrew Ash, you know, Xaro Nick's list. So it's all very confusing. I know people that have been following me for a few years, you get it. But, you know, they're all connected. And just because some shit's coming in through the back door in America, I'm not always going to fall for that either. There's good information in this video, and then there's this, what we're about to see.
As a CID officer, he discovered back coverings on child sex trafficking networks, which led to an investigative inquiry by the Independent Police Complaints Commission, delving into the depth of police involvement. He is one of the bravest men in the country today, by many people's reckoning.
Yeah, whose fucking reckoning's that then? Not real people that have fucking met him. Nicky Cooper can't fucking stand him and knows he's a fucking liar. I've met him and I know he's a fucking liar. He ain't against no child abuse. And who has he blown the whistle on? What names has he given? No one. His story is that he was investigating it and one day found one child and that led to another one and another one and another one. I doubt he's even a real copper. I think he's an actor. He ain't a real copper. The fact that he's had to drum into you, I was a copper, this has all been given the okay from fucking upstairs though. Don't get me wrong. Like, the police are in conjunction with this shit, because no one's going round fucking arresting him. The police are going round making it look like, oh, yeah, they're on him and they're against him. But they're fucking not. This is all big theatre ploy, and this looks formal, this seating. This makes you believe them. I even fell out with John and watched this seating after not talking to no one for a couple of years and went, fucking go on, John, because it looked so formal and I thought he is doing it. But when I check it out, now he's a shit cunt, and you ain't fucking blown the whistle on no one's names. Who have you given us, John? Who have you given us? All you've done is try to sell us your fucking stupid ass stand with John Wedger fucking t-shirts, and it ain't even your fucking name, and you ain't no fucking copper. Yeah? But what you're doing is being okayed by the top. They're allowing you to go around pretending you're a fucking copper. You ain't no copper. Don't believe ya. Don't believe ya. Don't believe ya. Don't fucking believe ya. I don't believe ya. You ain't a copper. And Bill Maloney weren't no fucking truth activist. And Ian Puddick, he ain't no fucking truther. His fucking case against the police, in my view, fake. Bullshit. His marriage, fake. Bullshit. In my view, my opinion, through what I've fucking seen. Yeah, it's all to cover and make him look like he's a family man. Yeah, oh, family man with a fucking plumbing company and a white van. No, he ain't. He works for the Queen. They forgot to mention that bit, didn't they? In the fucking newspapers. Yeah, when they was all bigging up his story about police corruption. He's another gatekeeper. I've got police corruption story. I know, I'm going to talk to Ian Puddick. Oh, yeah, I can help you, blah, blah. Why, they're fucking stitching you up. He worked for the fucking Queen. Get out of that. And Puddick, he's in the same boat as fucking Wedger. He's out of Puddick's crew. Ian Puddick, Bill Maloney, John Wedger, Lou Collins, Brian Gerrish, David Icke, all the fucking usual suspects, yeah? Yeah. Anyway, let's carry on. Listen to this. This is truth mixed with lies. There will be a couple of truthers in here. But the thing is, they were never getting anywhere because you got gatekeepers making up this ITJNJ commission, right? It was never going anywhere. And John Wedger ain't blown the fucking whistle on no one. Who's he named? Thank you. No one. Fucking no one.
John Wedger, thank you for joining us. Please speak freely to this commission.
I'm recently retired from the Metropolitan Police, where I served as a detective. I specialised in child abuse investigations, and what is relevant to me being here today was my service whilst on the Specialist Vice Unit. I had been asked to look into an allegation made by a 14-year-old girl that she is being used as a prostitute. On looking into it, it appeared that this girl was one of many. She gave me another girl, who in turn gave me another, and it just spiralled. Very, very quickly, we had dozens of young kids aging from 9 to 14 years old. All of them.
By the way, everyone who's watching, this is another channel of mine, so if you haven't subscribed, please just hit that subscribe button. Let's get the fucking numbers up on here as well, yeah? So that we can just fucking get out to as many people, yeah? These little numbers that we're sitting on down here is fucking bullshit. We was at nearly fucking 50,000. Where have you all gone? Yeah? Come back and subscribe. It ain't about me. I've got nothing to sell ya. It's the fucking information, yeah? It's the information. Please subscribe to this channel. Subscribe to bhtv.uk. Subscribe, please. Please.
Them were subject to care orders, either looked after or, emplacements, homes or whatever, but all known to the social services. A lot of them were known to the police for being missing persons and everything else. And all of them were addicted to crack cocaine and heroin, and were all being pimped out, as the term goes, by one person, which was a female prostitute who was very well known to the Met Police. And this woman had alleged connections with high-ranked officers and also a local magistrate and someone that was high up in executive status in the BBC. This woman seemed to work with impunity for many, many years, and when looking into it, this actual racket had been going on for a long, long time. What I did was I exposed my findings. I committed them to paper in what was just a basic intelligence report. But I had been approached by a Scotland Yard detective who told me, he said, when you investigate any crime and you do well at it, you get praised. When you look into child abuse cases, the opposite happens. Be very careful. He then told me about a cabinet minister that they'd investigated on a few occasions, and on each occasion they'd been shut down. So I was aware that this had gone on. So I was expecting to be praised for what I found out. Each day a new child would be found, and it was just spiralling. I was brought before someone who is now a very, very high-ranked officer in the UK indeed. And he sat me down and he said, John, I've got to be very upfront with you. And I said, well, I'd like to be upfront with you, Governor, as well. And he said, you know, you're, out of all the officers I've got here, there was about, 40 officers. He said, you're the second best one I've got, which was a good accolade. He said, but unfortunately, you've dug too deep. What the hell have you done? Now, on a personal level, since the beginning of 2000, I'd brought up 4 children on my own, and this was common knowledge within my unit. And he said to me, if you ever disclose what you found out, you will lose your home, your children, and your job. You must shut the F up. And he said, you will be thrown to the wolves. You have no idea who and what you are dealing with. He said, I'm warning you now, you must back away. And then he said something.
Now, if that ain't fucking scare tactics, that's not for him. That's for everyone else. Yeah, don't even think about it. Just back away. You'll lose this, you'll lose that, you'll fucking... Yeah, he's fucking... Don't listen to this cunt.
Something quite strange, and he said that if you say a word of this, and even if you make a complaint, it will come back to me and it will go in the bin. I and no one else will ever betray fellow rank. Shut your mouth. So I walked away from that investigation, and I moved on. I was offered to stay, but I couldn't. What was very strange was that the main witness, the young girl that came forward, was found dead in the street very shortly afterwards on a suspicious drug overdose.
Yeah, and we got to take your word for that. We're not seeing any records. Where's copies of your records and all your notes around them cases and that? Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Or ain't you wrote them out yet? Fucking joke.
Sort of compounding matters. One of them told me of a scenario when he was in a kid's home at the age of 4, was raped on his first night by a Catholic priest. He then went on to be raped daily and whipped and beaten. He became a drug addict, and he ended up as a rent boy on the street at an area of the West End where I used to work as a vice copper, and that was what was classed as the meat rack in Piccadilly.
Right, so he's referring now to Michael Tarrager. Now, American Truthers, yeah, if you're listening, check out a guy called Michael Tarrager, right? And you'll see that Michael Tarrager, who John Wedger is referring to now, was told that he needed to sex his story up, and he didn't want to go along with it anymore, and he blew the whistle on John Wedger, right? And no one's paying attention to that. Yeah, that's to sex his book up, which was called The Meat Rack, which is why I know that that's who he's talking about. Now, you're seeing a clip of John Wedger referring to a victim whose name is Michael Tarrager, right? Who John has led down a fucking garden path, yeah? And Michael Tarrager is calling John Wedger out. So, whoever's putting these videos together, check out Michael Tarrager, because that's who John Wedger is referring to in this clip that is being used looking formal, which is all bungle. This guy was never a fucking copper.
Circus, where young boys were openly picked up for the purpose of prostitution. It was known about. He went to get in a car, and he was in trouble. He needed drugs, so he needed the money. And he had a pimp, and he said a pimp wasn't a bad thing. A pimp actually looked after me. I was safer with a pimp on the street than I was in a kid's home. He went to get into a car which was a white Rolls Royce with 2 men in it. And his pimp said, don't go in that car. The last 2 boys went in there. They killed them. We never saw them again. He gesticulated for the driver to drive around the block. And his pimp didn't see this. His pimp thought he'd walked away. But he didn't. He got in the car.
Also, another point to mention, this geezer's got a serious drink problem, right? He come round my house, give me, like, because someone was fucking sticking their head through my window and I chased them down the road. Bill Maloney come round and brings Wedger round, yeah? Wedger comes round with 6 cans of Red Stripe, right? He's meant to be on fucking duty. He comes round with 6 cans of Red Stripe in a carrier bag. Says, oh, do you want one of them, bro? I'm like, no, you're all right. I told you wouldn't drink one of them. So Bill Maloney and John Wedger on the way round here have had some sort of a conversation as to whether I'll drink a beer or not. What's that about?
He was then taken to a very affluent part of London called Hampstead. He was then subjected to 3 days of torture and sexual violence in which he said that they knew that they'd killed him.
Hampstead, there's another thing that needs bringing up. See that story, right? I'll tell you, the child abuse there goes as far as instructing them kids to tell them fucking stories, yeah? Because everything that them kids were coming out with was identical to some of the footage that you're going to see in these 2 documentaries, these Imperiam documentaries. And you'll be able to tell the difference, right, between real and someone who's just reeling it off. And just because they're kids, so what? Kids go to acting school from what ages now? Kids soak up information like a sponge. They're being told to lie from a young age, yeah? Because when you see this other little girl on here who's told that she was made to watch a fucking kid being killed by these people in an underground fucking place with the kid on a fucking slab and they're cutting body parts off while they're abusing it and they left it alive to die that way, you see the fear in this fucking kid's face. These other 2 fucking kids from Hampstead, I'm sorry, but it's bollocks. And it's all connected to John Wedger, Ian Puddick and Bill fucking Maloney. They were all part of all of these operations. And that Hampstead case came up as I started turning on these lot, late 2014, yeah, and started fucking exposing them. And to cover it all up, they dropped the Hampstead case. Ricky Dearman on fucking BBC fucking Victoria Derbyshire. I sent Victoria Derbyshire, right, all of the Andrew Ash interview stuff. Why didn't you pick up on it, you fucking slag? Yeah, you fucking shit cunt BBC fucking slag. Whore cunt. Yeah, you fucking cunting fucking whore bag. Yeah, while there's kids out there getting raped. I don't want to look at your footage, you fucking muggy shit cunt. BBC fucking whore, demonic fucking cunt, paedophile protecting fucking slag. I'd like to slam your hair in the back of a BMW and drive up the fucking motorway. Yeah, full fucking throttle, you fucking evil cunt. Yeah, you had the fucking chance to talk about stuff and know the truth, but no, you BBC fucking slags always back these cunts. You even twisted Andrew's story. We're calling him David 2 years later in 2016, after he's been on the front page of the Express, January 2014, that I filmed, funded by Ian Puddick, who works for the fucking Queen. Yeah?
And he said they dumped his lifeless body on Hampstead Heath by the Royal Free Hospital, believing he was dead. And he said, what shocked me more?
This geezer's a fucking liar. Look in his face. He's a fucking liar. He's a liar. Works for the fucking government, along with Bill Maloney and Puddick.
Well, John, was the fact that these 2 men, they were well dressed, they had a big house, and they were actually getting ready to go to their niece's wedding whilst they were dropping my lifeless body off, perceived lifeless body off, on a bit of heath ground. Yet it goes on consistently. I took the matter to the policing minister at the time, a member of the Privy Council and a member of the government's cabinet. He met with me and he was actually, to my surprise, appalled. He arranged for a meeting with the Home Office. The Home Office then got their independent investigation team involved and stated that there will be an independent investigation into my claims, and they deemed that the Met Police and the IPCC had failed and they will look into it. I was summoned to a meeting and it was a fully recorded meeting and it was witnessed and in which the Cabinet Minister handed my paperwork over to the Home Office officials, and that was an official handover of the paperwork which I supplied to him. They then gave me their assurances that they will be in touch with me and give me a 24-hour contact number, and said they will investigate this independently. I never heard from them again. They have since denied receiving any paperwork. When pushed, they admitted they did receive it, but have now lost it. We are seeing police failings in respect to child prostitution hemorrhaging in this country, but we are seeing them on a provincial level. We're seeing them in Rochdale, Blackpool, Rotherham. We're seeing them in Oxford, Aylesbury, Swindon, all on a provincial level. London is one of the largest urban conurbations in the Western world. It has got one of the biggest police forces. We haven't heard one thing about organised child prostitution in London, and the reason being is that those high up have been covering it up, and this goes right to the heart. I was met with, as I said, Lenny Harper. Children were killed at Haute de la Garenne, in which Lenny Harper had forensic evidence, which was then went missing. And he said to me, "Be careful, what you're looking at will go right to the heart of the establishment."
Please help me. Dr. Phil, please. She wouldn't even show her face. The story you're about to hear is so shocking, so unbelievable, that your mind is going to struggle to allow you to accept that things like this exist. But they do. And they are happening right now all over the world, even in small towns right here in the United States. Kendall's story begins when she was a newborn and her parents sold her to a powerful man who owns a dangerous international sex trafficking organization.
I reckon that's what Millie Dowler's dad was. Same sort of thing. There's always the parents behind it. And them two fucking parents don't look right. And the sister, when she done an interview about her book that was coming out, My Sister Millie, all smiling through it. What are you smiling for? Someone killed your sister. What are you fucking smiling for? You know what it was? Duper's delight. There's something wrong with that case. Levi Belfield was definitely not acting alone, and I reckon he fell out with a couple of sorry old bill coppers, and they thought he was going to fucking say something, so they've stitched him up in return. I'm telling ya. I'm fucking telling ya. You want to see the companies? International Moving Services Limited. Levi Belfield, in conjunction with his ex-missus, or the bird that they're showing us is his missus. We've seen that before as well, haven't we, with Ian Watkins and this Joanne Magellix, who's also connected to Ian Puddick. No coincidence there, by the way. Yeah.
Man, she says, still owns her and wants her back. Kendall says every glamorous event and plane ride was with a wealthy client who paid for her so they could abuse her in ways, well, they're just simply too horrendous to comprehend. Now, for nearly 4 months, We researched Kendall's story, trying to verify its authenticity. And after speaking confidentially to agencies, we were able to confirm that Kendall has in fact been trafficked. Here's what she told us.
I was born into this world of sex trafficking. It's the only life I've ever known. Since I left, everything has been so hard, and nobody except the man who owns me can help me. I was given to the man who owns me by my birth parents, and I was forced to have sex with clients. One of my first memories was thinking that it was normal for men to be fondling babies. My whole life I traveled all over the world and would go to some of the biggest events to meet clients and have sex with them. They were all extremely rich and prominent members of society. Sometimes they would just want to have sex with me, and sometimes they'd make me have sex with different people. The clients were often physically abusive. Clients were even allowed to smother me with a pillow or plastic bag while having sex with me, but they were never allowed to leave marks or bruises on my face because I always had to look pretty. The man who owns me constantly manipulated me and did horrible things to me. He would make me be a dog, made me eat feces. I was kept in a cage. Sometimes he would electrocute me as punishment. He said that all of this was happening because it was God's will, because God made me for this. If I told anybody about what was going on, that nobody would believe me. I 100% believed him. I still believe him. Some clients own their own island or a big piece of land, and they would buy us just to hunt us. Some laid traps for us, and others would track us down like animals. It was important never to be the one captured first because you didn't want to appear like you weren't playing the game. You would be punished. It's one of the scariest things clients ever had me do.
Well, Kendall claims that she was purchased by wealthy clients to do anything they pleased. Now, sometimes she was used as arm candy, others for very sick games. On the outside, her clients were pillars of their communities. But behind closed doors, she says they were sinister and evil human beings.
The clients I was forced to have sex with were very rich and powerful, very important VIPs. They were in law enforcement, doctors, psychiatrists, judges, politicians, even people who owned sports teams.
So just about everyone that you would go to for help, really. All of these people are doing it in the background. You heard, forget the fucking sports teams bit, but all the rest of it, doctors, lawyers, law enforcement. I mean, in the last couple of years, we ain't half seen a lot of fucking police getting turned over for images on their phone or fucking the abuse of fucking victims that have gone to them. Do you know what I mean? The people that you run to are doing this very stuff. That's the reality. That's the reality.
I attended many parties.
And don't just think that this is all just in America, just because this is on Dr. Phil. What I'm interested in is why Dr. Phil is even putting this out, because he's a dodgy cunt himself with his fucking, what they called, fucking rehabilitation fucking centres and that. There was that Bad Baby girl who's I think she's an American rapper, some girl. She went off some fucking island, they put them on some kind of boot camp thing. Dr. Phil and all the fucking people and all that, they're all fucking abusers, allegedly. So, this geezer's probably putting stories out like this to shock everyone, like he's bringing you the news, and probably fucking doing it himself. I could see that cunt on them hunting trips.
For people who had just got elected into office. When I would attend these events, I had to look pretty and act like I belonged there. I had to know how to hold a conversation about politics. I would be at all of these nice events, but it would never end nice for me. At parties where people knew what we were there for, the clients would treat us really poorly. Many times clients were physically abusive. I've had broken fingers and broken ribs and been kicked a lot in the head. And I've even